one thing I've noticed, and that's the fact that while you can find tons of questions aimed at atheists, it's downright difficult to find any serious questions aimed at conservatives. And I know because I've looked. There are plenty of them that are sarcastic or they ask really stupid questions, but very few that seriously want to know what conservatives think. I did come up with one set of 10 that I will go through right now, and even though I don't think some of them are all that valuable, hey, at least I tried, right? So let's get started answering questions for conservatives. Number 1. As opponents of quote-unquote big government, why do you fervently support an unending stream of government-sponsored wars, vast government military spending, the power of local police to shoot and kill unarmed citizens, government interference with abortion rights and family planning, government restrictions on marriage, and the linkage of church and state? Well, I don't. And I think this is where it's necessary to differentiate between conservatives and neocons. I'm a conservative. The modern GOP is made up of neocons, and those are people who, frankly, are just hyper-religious liberals. They are not fiscally conservative. They're not for personal responsibility. They're certainly not for personal freedom, small government, or keeping the government the hell out of the lives of the people. They have all the problems that modern liberals do, just from a diametrically opposed perspective. So I don't personally support any of those things, yet I'm a conservative. Go figure. Number 2, as advocates of quote-unquote, and I love all these quote-unquotes here, but quote-unquote consumer sovereignty, why do you oppose requiring corporations to label their products with information, for example, contains GMOs, that would enable consumers to make an intelligent choice of products? Now, I really don't care if they label their products with information, so long as that information is relevant. What's really being advocated here are scare tactics. Until there's scientific evidence that genetically modified foods are actually bad for you, there's no reason to include it on the label. And let's be honest, every single food you eat is genetically modified in some way. We've been practicing selective breedings of our food for centuries. That's genetic modification. It just takes a long time that way. Now that we have the technology and the knowledge and the ability to do it quickly, why shouldn't we? What's actually different between crops we've selectively bred over decades and crops we've genetically engineered in a lab? Nothing. This is just technological paranoia, and we've got no need for that. As advocates of personal advancement through individual effort, why do you oppose inheritance taxes that would place the children of rich and poor on a more equal footing in their struggle for personal success? Because it's got nothing at all to do with success. It has to do with keeping what people earn, and that's the case whether you're rich or poor. The government deserves no more of your money than it requires to do the minimum necessary under the law. I have every right to take the wealth that I've accumulated during my life and give it to anybody I choose upon my passing. The government is not who I choose to give it to. This whole thing is nothing more than attempted wealth redistribution, and that's disgusting. Question number 4. As advocates of capitalist competition in the marketplace, why do you so consistently support the interests of giant corporations over those of small businesses? Well, I don't. But everyone has to be able to compete, and that competition isn't always on the same basis. Large corporations, like it or not, do have advantages simply because of their size. And that's just how reality works. That's how capitalism works. Anyone can get into a field, but not everyone will succeed equally or at all. The fact is, more than 70% of businesses will fail in the first 3 years. That's the result of competition. You have a plan, you execute that plan, and you see if your plan is successful. It isn't much of the time. Those companies less successful die. That's how the world works. Number 5. As advocates of the quote-unquote, and there it is again, I don't know why, quote-unquote private enterprise system, why do you so often favor government subsidies to failing big businesses and tax breaks to thriving big businesses that you desire to lure into your state or region? And again, I don't. I don't think that we should ever bail anyone out, period, and I strongly disagreed with bailing out the banks and other financial institutions under Bush. Again, businesses, and banks are businesses, succeed or fail based on their business plans. These businesses failed. They should have gone away. New banks would have popped up to replace them, or other banks that didn't engage in bad business practices would have gotten bigger to fill the gaps. I also disagree with tax breaks to lure in specific businesses. If you want to entice businesses, have a positive business environment, and they will come. Number 6, as advocates of freedom to choose to work for an employer, quote unquote, freedom of contract. What is this? Why do you oppose employees' rights to stop working for that employer, that is, to strike, and particularly to strike against the government? Newsflash for you. Striking is not stopping working for an employer. Quitting is. Striking is stopping that employer from doing business. If you don't like your job, quit. Go find a job more to your liking. Don't try to tell your employer how they are to do business. You can certainly bring up suggestions, but you have no right to demand that they do things your way under penalty of strike. And that goes for any job out there. Question number 7. As advocates of voluntary rather than government action to redress grievances, why do you so fervently oppose labor unions? Well, it's because I don't think that they're particularly useful. There was a time when unions were necessary, but all of the things that unions once fought for have been enshrined in law, and they're just not necessary anymore. I have 2 problems with many modern unions. First, a lot of them are huge. They're not really concerned with the conditions at a particular job site. They're concerned with the overall industry. And that means that an individual job site may not get the attention they need from a large national union. It also means that the individual workers may not be able to do things in a way that the union disagrees with. I'm not against local single-site unions, just the big ones. Secondly, a lot of unions are only interested in getting more members. They want money. Their means of getting money is abusing businesses to get their workers into the union. I don't know if I ever told this story before, but my wife worked for a company many years ago that was non-union and proudly so. The union desperately wanted to unionize the company because it would be a feather in their cap to do so. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how many votes they pushed, the workers unanimously voted not to unionize. So the union started vandalizing the company. They'd slash the tires on the trucks. They'd picket the business and block access. They'd call customers of the company and tell them lies to get them to stop doing business with them. The police used to live on the sidewalk, getting these paid union shills out of the way so they could conduct business. The last straw came when these paid shills broke into the building and stole all the computers and did significant damage. They had the whole thing on security footage, and it was the exact same paid union shills that had been picketing the business for months. The union threw them all under the bus and said they didn't know a thing about it. Yeah, tell me another one. And this is not at all uncommon. So, fuck unions. Number 8. As advocates of the free movement of labor and capital, why do you support government immigration restrictions, including the construction of enormous walls, the massive policing of borders, and the building of mass incarceration centers? What do you mean, free movement of labor and capital? Aren't you ignoring a rather important word in there? How about the free legal movement of labor and capital? What is it with you leftist assholes that you can't talk about legality? The people who are coming here illegally are criminals. Or didn't that occur to you? Number 9. As critics of statism, why don't you oppose government loyalty oaths, flag drills, and pledges of allegiance? Well, most neocons aren't really opposed to statism. They're totally in favor of government power as long as the government's doing what they want it to do, just like liberals do. I'm not particularly opposed to statism per se. The government certainly does have a place, and it's necessary to get some things done, whether libertarians like that or not. But I don't much care for loyalty oaths, flag drills, or forced pledges of any kind. And the courts agree, saying that you can't force anybody to say the Pledge of Allegiance or any other pledge, period. There is a difference between legitimate patriotism and forced patriotism, and I think both sides need to figure that out. And finally, number 10, as advocates of quote-unquote freedom, why are you not in the forefront of the fight against government torture, political surveillance, and censorship? Well, I do oppose all those things. But it's funny how the left only opposes them when it's in their personal best interest to do so. Otherwise, they're declaring books and movies to be misogynist and racist and demanding they not be used in college classrooms. They're declaring people to be sexist and engaging in hate speech and therefore not allowed on college campuses. Free speech requires that everyone be allowed to speak, not just the people you agree with. The biggest test of free speech is permitting speech that you oppose. But that's not something the left is able to do, is it? Just ask Milo Yiannopoulos. And besides, it isn't like the morons on the left are willing to criticize any of those things when it comes to their pet groups. Muslim governments in the Middle East murder people on a regular basis, but all we get from you people are crickets. Pot? Meet Kettle. I really don't feel like liberals have any real interest in asking conservatives valid questions. I know that whenever someone asks me something in the comments, I always respond and give my views. But not that many people are actually asking anything. They just don't care. If anyone has anything they want to ask me, put it in the comments, and I'd be happy to expound on my views. That's how rational people operate. Too bad we don't see more of that.